In his book, The Element, Ken Robinson writes that the key to education transformation is not to standardize education, but to build achievement, to personalize it on discovering the individual talents of each child, to put students in an environment where they want to learn and where they can naturally discover their passions. Good evening, PLF Universe. I'm your host, Aditya, and I welcome you to PLF Junior Season 1, Day 1, Session 7 of this special event with a brilliant assortment of panelists this evening. Let's get to know them. Vidhi has been a learning activist with Shiksha Shantar on the Udaipur as a learning city process project for the past 19 years. She works with the families learning together and unschooling initiatives as well as on community media and expressions in Udaipur as a learning city. Vidhi also spent 2 years working for Lok Jumbish, a grassroots project in Rajasthan where she designed and ran a program in rural villages to raise awareness and design inclusive schooling services for children with special needs. Vidhi worked directly with children in Delhi with Spastics Society of Northern India. Sumit and Mrudula are residents of Tapovan Ashram for Unschoolers Eco Village project with their son who is 12 and a half years old and their daughter who is 7.5 years old and practice the art of unlearning. Mrudula had facilitated in a Waldorf school for 3 years. She is a she is passionate about storytelling. Sumit is a freelance ecologist and is impassioned by eco constructions that design and facilitate experiential approaches of learning unlearning while visiting alternative learning spaces and public schools around Pune where they bring an essence of SDL inquiry based explorations. They have adopted living practices such as minimalism and sustainability by using old used stuff and handmade products. So I welcome all the three panelists to this session. And the first question for all of you is what is homeschooling and what does it mean for a country inflexible about paperwork and certificates? Let's start with Vidhi.
Thank you, Aditya. I'm very happy to be here. This is the first time I'm speaking in a literature fest, but I'm very excited that I'm getting to share about homeschooling and unschooling. Um, I am an unschooling mother. I live in Udaipur and I support families all over the country who want to learn more about how they can take control over their own learning. Um, I think for me, homeschooling, which is a very broad concept, means that we decide as families to take control over our own learning by either not sending our children to school or by designing a different curriculum of learning for them at home. Homeschooling is happening worldwide these days, and there is the beauty of homeschooling is that parents who don't send their kids to school do it in very unique, different ways. Homeschooling has aspects where some parents follow a curriculum while some parents don't follow a curriculum. As my daughter is an unschooler, she's never followed any curriculum, but she learns from her own spirit, the way she wants to learn, and she learns things that she's passionate about. So, homeschooling and unschooling are very, very powerful concepts and actually help families to think about how they want to live their lives, especially in this time when there is so much cutthroat competition and so much pressure on the kids. So, when I say that today in a country where most kids are actually going to school only because they need a piece of paper called a degree, I want to demystify that because I feel that today degrees and diplomas and certificates actually are not really the best way to evaluate a human being's potential. And so we need to walk out and think of different ways of actually evaluating a person's real learning. When I talk about homeschooling, I think there are many, many options for parents to think about how they want to learn and create learning spaces for their kids. It's a very alternative way of learning, and many people all over the world strongly believe that kids who homeschool are more creative and doing what they're really passionate about. I know a lot of writers who are very creative uh, homeschoolers and who have actually taken their writing to great levels. So, homeschooling is about designing your own life, your own learning at home and in the community that you live in. It's not just about home, but thinking about how your community can support your learning process.
That's an
I can ask,
interesting answer.
yeah.
Yeah, now let's hear from Mrudula and Sumit about what is homeschooling and what does it mean for a country inflexible about paperwork and certificates.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aditya, for bringing us here. We are glad to be a part of the literature festival. I mean, we are again. I mean, as Didi told, we are also for the first time in one of the literature festivals. Yeah. To answer this question, I mean, I know. I mean, this is a very wide question because homeschooling is, an entire, a continuum, a wide continuum about, the different aspects of what you experience from getting away from the school. Yeah, getting away from the schooled environment. So learning away from the schooled environment is something, homeschooling provides you. But yeah, I don't think I can answer, in specific way what homeschooling is. But yeah, since Vididiti has already answered a lot of things around homeschooling, I would like to talk about what homeschooling is not about. Right. So it's not about creating another school in your homes. The alternate schools creating in your home and getting into the teacher learner pedagogies all the time with your kids, judging your kids and at your home, and again, teaching from parents' angle. So we parents always, wear the teacher shoes all the time. So getting in that shoes all the time is not about homeschooling. It's not about judging and assessing your kids as well, right? So that's not homeschooling for sure. So homeschooling is more than that. So it's allowing your kid to flourish, explore his own learning journey, his own learning ways without any structure. I mean, with or without any structure, but based on his own style, own structure, and own pace too, right? And that's what the homeschooling is for me. Even for us, I mean, for me and Mrudula both. So we are unschooling our both kids, and so considering the certificates, degrees, what we require for the future proof, future readiness, what we create our generations for. So I don't think so these are these are the real these are the real needs of the learnings, I would call it, right? So the learning is basically creating a human being. So to allow him to flourish, to realize the self of the kid, and that's what the homeschooling provides. And I know a lot of lot of kids, the lot of different experiments are happening around, not outside of the country, but even in our country as well, wherein the homeschoolers, unschoolers are doing a lot of different things in different areas, right? So it's not only about the question of having the certificates or degrees. So it's challenging the entire education system. It's challenging the entire lifestyle systems that we are having. It's reimagining our life, and that's what homeschooling is about.
Okay, that's an interesting answer. So carrying on this,
Mrudula,
just
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
it's about alternate learning and not evaluating through certificates, but developing our own structure. So continuing on this, will homeschooling also do away with learning for learning's sake with exams and future employment in mind? Because that's the only reason we go to college for basically employment. So how will this change the environment around after the homeschooling is done if there's college in mind? How will that change? And how will the employment thing come into this? So let's start with Vidhi.
Yeah, if you ask me honestly, the only reason why parents today send their kids to school is because they think that they'll get a piece of paper called a degree or a certificate, which will get them into college, which will get them into a job. But, the thing is that the real world is very different today. You have more than 80% people who don't have jobs even after having many degrees. So actually, if you start demystifying the degrees and diplomas, you'll realize that people who are learning things more practically, who are doing things more practically, who have more skills are doing better in life. And I think a big portion of homeschooling is actually working on the child's skills and their capacities and their own intelligences. Most kids who go to school don't even enjoy going to school, but they are forced to go because their parents think that that's going to help them. If you ask me, a lot of kids hate going to school. I hated going to school, and I enjoyed being outside doing more things in nature. And I always wondered why I was spending so many hours in school. But the reality is that today's education system, schooling system has become a babysitting service. It's basically kids are away from home and they have no real relationship with their own communities, with their own families. So what I think homeschooling and unschooling is doing is reconnecting the children with their families, with their larger communities, and making them learn from people who are the creators of knowledge. So, see, I remember when I was growing up, I used to just learn everything from a textbook. But when I see my daughter who's never been to school, she's learning from so many different people. She's going and spending time with artists, she's spending time with farmers, she's spending time with potters, she's spending time with cooks. So the whole idea of homeschooling is that you go and learn from people who are really practicing learning. And that learning that happens with real creators of knowledge is much, much more powerful than the learning that happens inside a classroom and on the basis of only, and when you're evaluated only on the basis of exams, you realize that you actually don't even remember anything you learn in school. So when we want to create a homeschooling or unschooling environment, we're talking about real learning, which is authentic, relevant, contextual, and which makes sense to the child, and also which is actually more interest based. So when I always tell people that, हम कितना भी स्कूल में रट ले, but it doesn't stay with us. But if you actually go and do something practically, if you spend time with someone who's doing practical learning, that will stay with you lifelong. And that's the situation. Like if a person is really interested in writing, or if that person spends time with authentic writers, with people who are journalists, they'll get more experience. So when you say that you want to go to college, we always support young people. We support at Shikshantar, we support more than 10,000 families who don't send their kids to school. And we say that a degree will only help you in getting a job, maybe. But if you have a portfolio where you can share your learning experiences, your practical learning, people will value that more. So I think learning through internships, through portfolios, through practical ways is much, much more powerful, even for employees today. We did a campaign many years ago where we interviewed more than 500 organizations. And they said that if people are very passionate learners, if they are creative, we don't mind employing them even if they don't have degrees. So we really got this amazing, feeling that young people who are so passionate should be allowed to learn whatever they want to learn, and the school should not interfere with their way of learning, because every human being is so intelligent, so beautiful, so gifted, and yet we only judge them on the basis of a degree. So homeschooling opens up all these avenues where people can learn through internships, through going on traveling, by spending time with creators of knowledge. And a degree or a diploma really doesn't help. I know so many homeschoolers and unschoolers who are brilliant writers, who they decided to leave school or who never went to school, and who are writing for big newspapers, or who are even writing their own books, because they found their passion at a very early age, and their parents encouraged them to do what they like to do. And most people feel that when you learn from the heart, something magical happens. And homeschooling is that process where you can allow kids to explore many, many different things at one age. They don't do it through subjects, but they do it through real learning experiences. So my understanding is that the whole idea of homeschooling and unschooling becomes much more relevant when we're talking about creativity, imagination, and for people who want to do very creative, alternative kind of jobs. Thanks.
Thank you, Vidhi, for the interesting answer. So, Mrudula and Sumit, what's your take on learning for learning's sake with exams and future employment? As Vidhi said, demystifying the idea of certificates and diplomas. So, what has your experience been on that?
So what has your experience been on that? Yeah, certainly. I mean, very insightful thoughts, Vidhi, that you had. I mean, just I would like to add a couple of points here. So, yeah, so basically, the exams, I mean, the education, entire education system, what we have created, the modernity has created, right? I mean, based on the exams, certificate, degrees, piece of paper, as Vidhi mentioned, it's, sort of a colonized education system. And homeschooling is a movement, I would call it, rather, to decolonize this education system entirely. So it's not about, the learning per se, but it's about it's a complete movement. And in my opinion, every child, since it borns, right, so from the birth itself, every child is a sort of a natural learner, right? So we most of the time we condition him and break his natural learning ways, and try to create a lot of the world views. We try to induce a lot of world views which are not relevant for the child to his education system. So through that, we need to challenge the learning, whether it is really creating the future readiness, whether it is really to get ready for the future, or is learning really into the being all the time. So that is something which is, again, and from our experience as well, we started, we started unschooling our kids as well. We started, small movement in one of our cities, Pune as well, nearby the Pune. I think we thought to collaborate with different people, those are different artisans, as we did mention, right? So different artisans, different artists, so who are closely working with the kids, rather kids are closely working with them and learning through the self-designed learning process. And that's what probably the homeschooling environment would be to provide. So it is to it's not only to generate livelihoods, but yeah, it is something about questioning life, lifestyle that we are living in, and that is something a homeschooling environment would definitely provide.
All right. So, from what we have discussed so far, then it's all about internships and probably, as Vidhi said, moving towards a Gurukul system as students spend time with actual people and in the vocational field. So my question is then, how will this help in developing the cognitive, socio-emotional, and psychomotor domains? So if how will the peer thing work? So in schools, it's not just about sitting in the class for 8 hours and just listening to a droning lecture. It's about students interacting with students, engaging in activities. That is also one part of school that, let's say, students enjoy. That's one thing I enjoyed, to be in the ground all the time and just play and not bother about exams and just leave it. Exams were there. So how will this work in homeschooling? How will the peer part work, where they engage in sports, or engage in activities, or have a moment where they have to take decisions, that is leadership things? So how does that work in homeschooling? So is there any kind of peer-to-peer interaction? Vidhi?
Yes, I think, when somebody asks me about, socialization and homeschooling and unschooling, I'm very honestly tell them that I think that most kids who go to school are most antisocial, and kids who actually spend more time outside school spend more time with people of all ages. They are more confident in interacting with old people, with young people, with animals. They actually are very good at interacting with all species, not only human beings, because they are learning practically and they are spending time outside. Homeschooling is not about sitting at home all day. It's really about exploring the world at your own terms. I know so many homeschooling families who never send their kids to school and who have, done so many exciting sports and have. See, if you actually look at how the human body develops, children are not supposed to be sitting in one place, especially if you make a 4-year-old sit in a text on a bench for 5 hours. That's anti-learning. There is nothing natural about that child's learning process. You can't sit in one place and learn. Kids at that age have to run around, break things, explore their environment. And unfortunately, schools today make a very young child sit in one place. So a child who doesn't go to school is actually spending more time outdoors, interacting with people of all ages, people of their own age. My daughter has friends of all age groups, of her own age, older, much younger, and she is very free that way. She goes to people's houses, to her neighbors' houses, to the local village around us, to the sabji mandi, and spends much more time learning from people. She doesn't have to sit, she doesn't have a timetable, a structured timetable where she has to sit in one bench for 5 hours, or one classroom, one period of maths and one period of science and one period of economics. She does everything that comes to her naturally. And so learning and socialization is also a very natural process in this. There is no forced interaction. You go and spend time with people. You travel a lot. I think that's a very big advantage of children who don't get stuck to school, that they learn by traveling, exploring nature a lot, and also being with people who are, have many different interests. See, today the biggest I see that peer you need peer group, but unfortunately this kind of peer group you get in school is very competitive, highly competitive. You're competing with your best friends, and I think that's actually not even good for you. If you're going to be competing with your best friends all the time, it's actually insensitive, I feel. So when you interact with people of different ages, when you learn from different people of different ages, my daughter has friends of her age group. She goes and does what she wants with them, but she also does things with people of all other age groups. She's very creative because she spends a lot of time in nature. She loves animals, and she is an artist, and she develops all kinds of skills. She does farming, she does homework, like घर का काम भी सारा करती है, cooking भी करती है, and they get a lot of time to do things that they are very passionate about. They don't have to focus on only an exam or a textbook. And I think kids need to be let loose. They can't be sitting in one place for more than half an hour. That's not the way bodies develop. I mean, you need to let kids be out in the nature. Now, I know so many homeschoolers and unschoolers who are great sports person, who at a very early age started doing sports and trekking and mountaineering and swimming, and they're doing so well. Actually, they're representing the country also and doing good to their own bodies. So there is a whole lot of things, possibilities that open up when you're not confined to a school system. You can do so much more, and you end up saving a lot of money if your child doesn't go to school, and you can spend that money in helping them pursue the passion that they want. Like a lot of young people have to start sports at a very early age if they want to become professional sports person. So that money that would go into, filling school fees can actually go in something that they're very passionate about. So I feel that a lot of all kinds of development is possible when the child is free and not under pressure and competition all the time. And yeah, I can connect you with so many families who are doing so many creative things and also interacting with people. When my daughter doesn't go to school, so many of her age group kids come and say, okay, we would also like to do creative things with you in your family, in your neighborhood, because they see that kids can learn so freely. So I feel they're a big attraction to kids of all of the neighborhood also, and they do so many creative things together.
Mrudula and Sumit, can you take this forward? How has your what has the whole idea of socialization meant to your kids? How has it changed from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So there has been, I mean, a lot of criticism around homeschooling, right? When it comes to emotional development of the kids, or probably the life skills about the kids. So there is always a question whether there would be social relationships. Would your child be the social when you start homeschooling your kid or unschooling your kid, right? But that is, as Vidhi said, I mean, that's the beauty of homeschooling. So they are more social. We observed. So here I mean, while we're in city as well, in the urban context as well. So the homeschoolers typically learn from different generations. So the intergenerational learning which happens with them is, the beauty of real learning. So in the traditional schooling system, what we do is basically try to limit their peer learners as well, right? Or peers as well. So from whom they want to learn. So in homeschooling or unschooled type of environments, the kids would decide about their peers from whom they want to learn. So their gurus. So their gurus can be of a different age. So that can be the grandmothers, grandfathers. There can be the society. I mean the watchmen of society or the community folks around. As Vidhi told, right? It's about an ecosystem as well. Like for our daughter as well, she is continuously playing. I mean, right now as well, while we are in eco village, she is continuously playing with the puppies, and she's since she's with the puppies, she tries to learn their language, their different what different things that they want, so sort of things, right? Similarly, when we are here, so they go and find their own members, local communities from whom they want to learn something about. Even for my son as well, so he learned the carpentry from one of the persons. I mean, मेरे जैसे ही एक बंदे हैं यहाँ पे, so he learned from him. So that's how they decide about their guru as well. So and it's completely up to child to decide what to what not to learn, whether I should learn something about that or not. So rather than getting into the socio emotional dilemma, so I would call it that's something which is really I mean, that is the homeschooling environment offer the socio-economic or cognitive development more than anything. Similarly, even when we talk about the hand, head, and heart engagement of the kids, even in through this natural learning process, or while they are with the nature, so they keep on climbing the trees, they keep on jumping from different surfaces as well. So feel different patterns, different textures, and it's completely experiential learning that they do. And I don't think the school environments would provide all these ecosystems to learn the learner for the learner. And that's homeschooling environment would definitely give an upper hand when it comes to all these developments as well of the kids. Since Mrudula was already taught in a school, so probably she would like to add something on that.
या श्योर। तो बेसिकली हाय, मैं वॉल्डॉर्फ में मैंने 3 साल फैसिलिटेट किया है। तो मुझे भी ऐसा ही लगता है कि कोई भी ऑल्टरनेटिव सिस्टम हो, मतलब व्हाई वी हैव प्रिफर्ड अनस्कूलिंग अवर चिल्ड्रन। तो एवरी पेडागोजी हैज सम स्ट्रक्चर। तो बेसिकली वी एज पेरेंट्स वी डोंट वांट टू पुट एनी स्ट्रक्चर टू आवर चिल्ड्रन। तो कोई भी स्कूल सिस्टम, जैसे मैं वॉल्डॉर्फ में भी थी, तो इतने अलग अलग और सुंदर सुंदर सब्जेक्ट्स हम कह सकते हैं, बट आई हैव ऑब्जर्व दैट कि कभी कभी बच्चों को ना उन सब्जेक्ट्स में रुचि नहीं थी, फिर भी वी पुश देम डू इट। मतलब समटाइम्स वी गिव देम फ्रीडम कि चलो 2 टाइम मत करो, 3 टाइम मत करो, बट वी कैन नॉट गिव देम फ्रीडम एवरी टाइम, बिकॉज हमको पेरेंट्स को भी अकाउंटेबिलिटी रहती है कि बच्चे क्या कर रहे क्या नहीं कर रहे। तो वी आर पुटिंग सम स्ट्रक्चर इन स्कूल्स। तो बेसिकली मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि होम स्कूलिंग या अनस्कूलिंग में वी वांट टू क्रिएट सच एन एनवायरनमेंट जहाँ केयर है, फ्रीडम है और ट्रस्ट है। तो बिकॉज ऑफ दैट ये सोशल बच्चों के लिए जो सोशल हम करना चाहते हैं बच्चों को, तो बेसिकली वो उनकी अर्ज है। वी आर नॉट फोर्सिंग देम टू गो टू योर ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स और टू गो टू द वॉचमैन और गो टू समबडी एंड learn from them, but वो उनकी अर्ज है और उनको लगता है कि उनके पास जाएंगे और वो उनको ये भी नहीं पता कि वो कुछ सीख रहे हैं, बट इट्स हैपनिंग नेचुरली, मतलब हम उसको लेबलिंग नहीं कर रहे कि वो कुछ सीख रहे हैं, लेकिन वो अंदर की अर्ज है जो उनको ये करने को ऑटोमेटिकली बहुत सहजता से वो ये कर पा रहे हैं। तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि दैट्स व्हाई वी आर क्रिएटिंग सच अ नाइस एनवायरनमेंट जहां बहुत ट्रस्ट है, एक दूसरे के लिए केयर है, जो सेंसिटिविटी हम बच्चों में में क्या बोल सकते हैं, शाबुत रखना चाहते हैं, मतलब कि वो हम लॉस नहीं करना चाहते। तो बिकॉज ऑफ दैट मुझे ये बहुत अच्छा लगता है अनस्कूलिंग।
Yeah, I mean, that is something, the holistic environment that we try to create through the homeschooling. I mean, in my opinion, when we started unschooling our kids, so जब especially for मेरे बड़े बेटे के लिए, we released him from the school first of all, right? And from I mean, from then onwards, we could observe the different social connections that he's making. He's into him, but still he's making lot of social connections based on his need, based on his urge, as Mrudula right said. And that is the beauty of creating this unschooled environments.
So thank you, Vidya and Mrudula and Sumit, for this wonderful session. Now let's open the floor to some questions. So the audience who is watching, can we have some questions from you? Okay, so while we wait for the audience to have some questions, let's see. Okay, I'll ask one final question till the time anyone comes. So if, as Vidhi and Mrudula said, that there are no certificates, nothing, so, and it was a very interactive session, and something new came out of this, because I've heard about homeschooling, but today I got to know the in-depth experiences. So will this now start becoming like a trend that your kids will also start getting into the mood, and then schools will be forced to change their style when they realize that will they be forced to change the rigid structure, even if we don't go to school as per se in a setting, but will this, if this trend becomes more, let's say in the next 2 decades, something of a formal thing, informally formal, how will the mindset of the schools change, let's say in the next 2 decades? Even if students don't go to school, but still, what will be the whole, how will the certificates and things like that, if they're not there, and it's all about experiences, which is interesting, which I also think it is most important, because I've gone through phases where, so I have a question from Rahul. Homeschooling versus unschooling, what is the best way for a parent to start with, and with what age for your kid? Who can answer? Vidhi?
I can answer.
Yeah.
So, see, again, the thing about homeschooling and unschooling is that every family does it for their own reasons. There's no like one reason why people choose to homeschool or unschool. And post COVID, a lot of people are coming ahead because the school system has changed dramatically in the past year. You know, things have changed so much. Everything is online, but if you ask me very honestly, it's a lifestyle choice. It's homeschooling is not, you just decide to pull your kid out of school and then the parents continue to live their life. It's about how parents also engage in their own learning. I feel that's what's important. Both me and my husband, we never sent our child to school. It was a we had decided that whenever we have kids, we'll never send them to school. So my daughter has never been to school. She's seen school like a child will go to a zoo to see a school or a museum, but she sat in some classrooms, but she never decided to, want to be a part of it. And we gave her this choice. So parents decide when they want to send their. Some people pull their kids out of school uh, at a 5 or 6 when they start seeing the pressure building up. Some people can pull them out later. I think unschooling is something that parents also have to do. I'm also in an unschooling journey, even though I've been in school all my life, but I feel that I'm unschooling myself now, because to be able to grow up with your child, you need to unlearn so much garbage that you have, no, in your mind. We are so conditioned to thinking in a certain way about success, good lifestyle, what is all the fears that we have. So unschooling is a process that can happen at any age. It's really not about the school system only, it's about how you want to live your life. So I call myself an unschooler at this age also. My daughter has never been to school, so she's been an unschooler. And homeschooling is possible at any age. I mean, in India, the advantage of homeschooling is that we have something called National Open School. So people can pull their kids out of school at class 5, class 6, class 7, class 8, class 9, class 10, whenever they want. And then their kids, if they want to follow a structured curriculum or something, they have National Open School and they follow with that. And they don't have to really send their child physically to school, but they can follow a curriculum at home and get their kid to give an exam. So homeschooling happens in so many different ways, and I feel that this is a very personal choice, how and when parents decide to do it, and when kids want to do it. If you ask me, I think if you ask most kids, all kids would want to be homeschooled or unschooled. They don't want to go to school. Yeah.
So, Sumit and Mrudula, final question through Rahul. Homeschooling versus unschooling.
Yeah. So same for us as well. I mean, like Didi, I mean, we hadn't thought about unschooling our kids from initial stage, right? So the बच्चा पहले school में गया, and then we started his unschooling journey. Yeah, but when we thought about that, we never thought about a structure for it, right? So homeschooling or unschooling, again, as I said, right, it's a continuum. So challenging the entire what challenging schooling system, education system, what the kid want, what we want, as a whole unit. So that is something that we need to decide jointly, we need to decide collectively, and it could be anything, right? So following homeschooling through, as we mentioned about, I mean, through the different exam patterns, what we follow, following homeschooling through the the different curriculums like Waldorf curriculum or NCERT curriculum, even that's a possibility. Or do nothing with kids without having any structures as well, and let them do what they want. The natural learning should flourish them. So if that is a possibility, so for us as well, I mean, it was always a choice. I mean, it was the choice made by our kids. So they thought they don't want to they don't want the schools, they don't want the structures, they don't want the schedules, rhythms. They want to get rid of that, and they want to create their own learning process, and that's how they are creating their journeys right now. And for us as well, we ourselves are doing a lot of unlearning for that, unschooling for that. We had a lot of fears, insecurities, inhibitions about learning process entirely, and about the entire lifestyle, about the future readiness of kids, and so on and so forth, right? So we are doing some work, some unlearning work around that too. So yeah, so that's where homeschooling or unschooling can be started anytime. Any time wouldn't be late for sure. Even we are doing that at this age. So for kids as well, I don't think that would be late anywhere.
I think that does answer the next question which had come. How a kid can discover about his, her calling and dreams to follow. So, well, it was an interesting session, and a lot of things came out and became clear. And that homeschooling is not home and schooling, because that can be contradicted in a lot of ways. Because the definition of school for decades has been all about that four-walled institution, getting up in the morning, getting into uniform and going. But it's more than that, it's learning through your own experiences, which I've also experienced. I'm also getting into that mode, not exactly homeschooling, but just following my own what I want to do. So that's something that's I've also kind of experienced. So I do understand what Mrudula and Vidhi and Sumit have been trying to inculcate. So it was an interesting session, and it was quite fun and knowledgeable to interact with the three panelists. And let's hope that we see them in more literature festivals, because that's also one way to unschool yourself, when you talk to people and get to know their what they do. So thank you to our panelists, Mrudula, Sumit and Vidhi, for being here this evening and answering all the questions that were there. And I hope to see you along with the PLF. Also hope to see you in future literature festivals. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Aditya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
So much, Aditya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, Sumit.